Well, good afternoon, my friends. I hope you're doing very well on this day. This day is St. George's Day, and the sun has partly, at least, come out. I put my flag on the pole and I sit outside the house, which is first time actually in a long time. So maybe spring is really here, you know. You may wonder at the title. Any Englishman would know what it is. It's the battle slogan for Henry V, Shakespeare. Cry God, Harry, England and St. George. Going on onto the breach one more time, you know. So today, with King Charles III, we should actually say, cry God, Charly, England and St. George, with a big sword in your hand, you know. Unfortunately, I left my sword in the other place, so you have to imagine that sword, you know. We don't actually really celebrate St. George's Day very well. I think it's getting better. I think some pubs do events and some towns, they organise parades maybe, but in my youth it was almost a forgotten day, you know, which is a shame. So, housekeeping, of course. Knights of Templar lighter, of course, you know, and the Ben Wade St. George's Day pipe. They don't make these anymore, unfortunately. It's a lovely grain, especially on this side, and it's a lovely stem. And the tamper today is Sir Walter Raleigh. You haven't seen him for a long time, and it's a beautiful pewter tamper, you know. Sir Walter Raleigh, another Englishman. We owe so much to him, you know. And to celebrate the day, Benson and Hedges ashtray, of course. And the tobacco today is this one, Trafalgar, Drucquer Sons, founded in London 1841. Came in a nice tin, hermetic sealed, and you know the tins, but I jarred it up to give a bit more breathing space. And this is a classic English blend, and Drucquer Sons is GLPs actually, of course, and made by C&D. But the quality of the tobaccos in these blends are particularly good. This is actually an unfiltered pipe, one of the few that I have. I always put Denny Cools or crystals, you know, in the bottom of the bowl, or a shallow pad. In this case, I put the Denny Cool crystals to dry the smoke and absorb some of the tar, and that works pretty good, you know. So this blend has Latakia, Oriental, Turkish, and Perique and Virginia. It's a classic ribbon cut. I think it's got like 4 stars in tobacco reviews, and Jimmings and Pipe Stud 4 stars. So it's obviously a high quality tobacco. What I find myself is the forward flavours are tangy. You know, that's from the Orientals, and bready notes from the Red Virginia. Very pleasant. In the background there's a little bit of grassy, musty and floral background. Just about enough sweetness from the Latakia, probably. It's Cyprian Latakia. What I like is the burn dynamics. This was very dry in the tin, you know, when it arrived. So I put a couple of hydrostones because I like a bit of moisture, not crispy and dry. That's a personal preference, and I know GLP's when he made this concept, he said, you know, smoke it dry, but it's usually too hot for me and too fast. And right now I've a couple of days put hydrostones in this, and a bit more space, and it's breathed and absorbed a little bit of moisture. And I always find a bit of moisture, not too much of course, not wet, and just a bit of moisture helps mobilize the flavors, and especially sweetness. So I need that from an English blend, you know. Not a huge much, not like a aromatic, but a bit of sweetness, a kiss of sweetness is nice. Well, I thought actually Trafalgar, that triggered memories of the Battle of Trafalgar, and I would spend a few words on that. The battle was actually in October 21st, 1805, 10 years before Waterloo. And Admiral Nelson was 47 years in his prime with experience. But at Trafalgar he was outnumbered. He had 27 ships. The fleet against him was a cooperation from the French and Spaniard fleet. So it was almost 2 fleets and 33 ships, and some of them quite larger than the Victory, for example, which is the flagship of Admiral Nelson. And so the odds were not that good, but he was unconventional in his tactics, and usually in those days, if you are outnumbered, you harry the bigger fleet and try to attrition and go for a draw or something like that. Nelson was very bold, and he said, we'll go straight at them and we'll split these fleets in 2. And that was also a master of fear, because they didn't really expect him to do that. They knew it was a danger, but they thought he'd be crazy. He's outgunned, and you know, and he did it very fast. And he had Rear Admiral Collingwood on another attack axis, so each half of his fleet could take one of the split halves and engage them. Here's the battle plan. Spanish side, they had Admiral Gravina, and on the French ships they had Admiral Villeneuve, and this one, Admiral Gravina, this one. Admiral Villeneuve was quite experienced, and he was on the biggest ship in both fleets, Centésima Trinidad flagship, and it was the biggest one in all of these fleets. The other advantage that Nelson had is the French fleet had a long sailing journey behind them from the Caribbean, and they were a bit exhausted, and morale was a bit low, you know. So he surprised them, and they slightly panicked and split very easily, and the battle engaged, and it was a fierce and frightful battle. And some artists have captured that sentiment here. And here's another one. Though Nelson had an advantage, it was still a fierce battle, and actually at the end 22 Allied ships from the French and Spanish were sunk, and a lot of them badly damaged. On the British fleet we had no sunk ships, but quite a bit of damage, and repair was necessary after the battle. Everybody knows what happened. This was the last day for Admiral Nelson. He was in the late stage of the battle, where more or less they had won the engage. He was shot by a sniper in the rigging of a French ship, and fatally, and died in the line of duty. Now, fortunately, the gentleman of the Admiralty of Spain, Villeneuve, Admiral, he agreed that both fleets could go to Cadiz and the port, and captured prisoners could be exchanged, and the wounded also looked after. So that was a humanity agreement after this battle. I don't know if it happened these days, but at least then they were pragmatic about defeat or victory. It was a victory for England, but King George III actually wept when he learned that Nelson had died, and he said, "I'm not sure we actually paid a greater loss losing Nelson rather than the battle. It's actually a very fine English blend, and I see no problem to smoke all this. It's very refined, I must say. It's one of the best English blends I've tried. Certainly comparable to early morning pipe, but a little bit of Oriental bias is a plus, I must say, this one. So, a lot of people know that Admiral Nelson, his body was put in a cask of brandy, and there was a joke saying that the sailors took a little drink from that cask, and the Admiral's toast. Victory actually set sail for Gibraltar for repairs, and the Admiral's body was then transferred for the cask to a lead coffin lined filled with what they called spirits of wine and a bit of camphor and myrrh to preserve until they got back to England. Is interred in St. Paul's Cathedral in a magnificent tomb, and worth a visit to pay respects if you're an Englishman, at least. So here's to Admiral Nelson and Trafalgar. Well, as everybody knows, I guess in about a week we will have a coronation in London with the crowned head of Prince Charles becoming King Charles III. So that's going to be a great week, and I will be in London. I'm from peasant stock, so a commoner. So I'll be on the side of the street, and one with a flag and waving and something like that. But I'll stay at my club, and it's going to be a lovely week. A lot of celebrations and music and fireworks and things like that. So it's going to be something to watch on television if you're not there. And if you're near to London, then it's worth a visit for one evening or to see what's going on. So, cry God for Charly, England and St. George.